out of here. You're not gonna believe this because it usually never happens, but I made a mistake.
Hello and welcome to I Can't Believe It's Not the Mouse, the podcast all about animated movies not made by Disney. I'm your host, Octaviano Macias, and today I'm doing another, well, I don't want to say short episode, but it might be just because it's another one of these where I'm focused on an episode of a show instead of a movie. Normally I want to do these on episodes that I find stand out in one way or another. If you remember last time I did it on one of the final episodes of BoJack Horseman, and this time I'm doing it on another adult comedy show, that being Rick and Morty, a much more popular show, one that more people are familiar with, and it's one of the biggest episodes of the show. I'd honestly argue it's the biggest game changer of the show, which is the episode Rick Potion number 9. Normally what I consider game changers for shows are episodes where something that we previously knew is completely changed about the show. Like, for example, if you've ever seen the show Steven Universe, it's alright. The first season has an episode where we find out that the main girls that Steven hangs around with, which are known as the Crystal Gems, these alien beings that appear human-like but are really just the product of like what we see from like these little gems, and hence the name. We find out that they're not the only ones around because of a character named Lapis, and we find out that, hey, maybe we can't fully trust these people. Like, not to the point that they become villains, but to a point where we start realizing, like, okay, they're hiding some information from our main character. That's an example of a game changer episode. And in the case of Rick Potion number 9, like, if you've seen Rick and Morty, or at least are aware of it, you probably know that a lot of the show deals with, like, the multiverse, and like, hey, here's a universe where Rick and Morty are this or that or whatever. This is the episode that fully cements just what that means for the show and just how much that's going to impact the show. Like, it really sets the tone. Like, there are other episodes that have, of course, changed the dynamic or given us something that we just didn't expect. We recently, I say recently, it's been months actually, since the last season finale, where we find out that there's like, we already knew there was an even more evil Morty, but we found out exactly what evil Morty was doing in this whole city that's built by Rick's to house Rick and Morty's. And for those of you who somehow are completely unaware of Rick and Morty, just think of it as Back to the Future with the whole Doc and Marty dynamic, only Doc is an alcoholic asshole, and Marty, or Morty, is his nephew, his grandson in this version, who's kind of an idiot, but not really, as we find out throughout the show. But yeah, this is the episode where they definitely just made you really think about, like, okay, what exactly are we watching? Like, and of course, just what's funny is that this episode came in very early in the show. It's the 6th episode of the show, so yeah, it's not too far along, but prior to this, you would just assume, like, okay, so it's just that. Like what I said with the Back to the Future thing, it's just a parody of it. It's funny, it's goofy, whatever. This one really sets a very emotional tone, and it makes you realize, like, oh, they're gonna delve into some heavy stuff, aren't they? And as the shows continue, yeah, we've dealt with some heavy stuff. But, okay, so I've had enough of a setup. What exactly is this episode about? So, this episode, like most Rick and Morty episodes, even up to this point, is just, Morty is kind of a horny dipshit. He wants to go to some dance with a girl he likes, and she's like, oh, well, Rick, you're a genius, you created a bunch of stuff. Why don't you create, like, a love potion so that I can go out with the girl I like? Which, even they call it out, like, really, you're gonna do, like, essentially, like, a rape potion, like, make a girl forcibly fall in love with you. Come on, that's not cool, dude. And so, of course, eventually Rick does, but twist, he messed up. And I like that the show even has the whole thing with him saying, like, oh, this normally doesn't happen, but I messed up this time. Of course, throughout the show, he messes up a lot more times, but, just early on, that's just a really funny line to have. Oh, and by the way, this should be obvious, I'm going to be doing spoilers. I know I'm kind of inconsistent in saying, like, oh, this is what I'm going to spoil, this is what I'm not going to spoil. I guess it really comes down to, one, whether or not it's been seen by people, and two, in this case, Rick and Morty is a show, so even if I spoil something that happens in this episode, which, fine, it sucks, but you have to remember that you already kind of know, like, okay, well, if this show's had, like, multiple seasons, that at the very least to make it out okay, or, certain changes that come about from this episode have already been addressed or reinforced in other episodes, so there's nothing I can really do on that front, So, spoilers, doesn't matter. Sorry. But yeah, Rick messes up the potion in terms of, it turns out that because there's, it's like on flu season, it activates the potion to basically be like, okay, the second someone sneezes, it goes off to some other person and it goes all over the place. So essentially, everyone starts falling in love with Morty. This girl spreads it out to other people in the gym, guys, girls, teachers, etc. And they're all falling in love with Morty. The only people who are immune to this are pretty much his blood relatives. So, like, Rick even mentions, like, oh, yeah, that's why I'm not attracted to you or trying to fuck you, because they're pretty much acknowledging, like, look, even we're not gonna go with the whole incest route. But of course, it starts spreading all over the place. Eventually, it becomes so contagious that the whole world is essentially in love with Morty. Rick tries fixing it by adding some, I think it was like praying mantis DNA or something like that, which results in people turning into giant humanoid praying mantises who are trying to fuck Morty and then eat them, because if you know anything about praying mantises, they eat the head of their partners after making love to them. And it gets so over the top that by the end of the episode, well, for starters, you also do get to see, like, the parents and the sister, how they deal with it. It's, like a horror zombie kind of movie through their eyes. Eventually, they acknowledge, like, yeah, we're done with Rick and Morty shit. The mother finally realizes that the husband is tough. And yeah, they all realize, like, yeah, fuck Rick and Morty, which already gives you a hint of where this episode is going. Rick realized, like, okay, so I really messed this up, but don't worry, I found a real solution to this. Rick and Morty go through a portal, and you see everything's fine. Like, there's even a newspaper saying, hey, we averted disaster last week. So you're like, okay, so what happened to all the praying mantis people? Like, how exactly did he cure this? And you see, Rick and Morty just palling around in the garage until they eventually die from an explosion. And then you see that portal pop up again, and you see Rick and Morty, the one we've been following throughout the entire episode, show up, and pretty much, Morty freaks out. He's like, hey, our dead bodies are right here. What's going on? While Rick is like, okay, look, here's the truth. I fucked up bad. There's no way to fix it. So the only way we can get around to that is just to slip into a universe where we did fix it and died shortly afterwards, and we'll just, take their place. Let's just bury their bodies, and that's it. So, one, very dark ending, and, even the music really, really sets it off. And two, this actually, you can see Morty, traumatized by this because he's having to bury his dead body and, just slipping into a universe that is like his but is not, while Rick is pretty much comfortable with it, which of course gives you an idea that, hey, maybe Rick has done this before if he's so calm about it. And of course, they even throw in some jokes about it being like a TV show, because he's like, okay, we only got like one or two more of these before people realize that we're just bullshitting. So, or something like that. And it's like, okay, so that's kind of clever. And it's like a very dark take on the whole, like, oh, everything turns out to be okay at the end of the episode of the sitcom, because we gotta have more adventures eventually. Like, in this case, it's like, instead of somehow magically fixing it, we just magically abandoned it, but with science. And yeah, it's just an incredible way to close the episode, because it's kind of like, yeah, most shows would find some bullshit way, like, oh, there was one thing we overlooked or we just never thought of, and we set it up early on in the episode, and this episode's like, no, sometimes you fuck up bad. And yeah, there's really no way around it. So instead, Rick and Morty just slip into another universe. It's the same as it was when it was peaceful, so that's how we do it. And of course, with that, it really opens up the whole show, like, okay, if they can go through the multiverse, then anything is possible. And of course, it also starts asking, like, okay, how many times has Rick done this? Are we going to find out? Are we going to get to know more about this? And eventually in the show, we start to learn more about his backstory, and we realize that part of his careless attitude has been because of how much he just does not, how much shit he's been through, and how much he just does not care anymore, because he's been through so much shit that it not only stops being impressive, it's just like nothing really matters because of how much it is. So with that, you kind of start realizing, okay, so that's kind of where the show has to go as it goes along, is just finding a way to make Rick actually give a shit about what's going on, which, does happen over time, where he starts showing that he does care for this Morty that he's with, even though it's pretty clear that it's not his Morty. And it just fully cements like, okay, so he's done some bad stuff. So I don't know, it's just a really impressive deconstruction of what we normally expect from sitcom episodes. And instead of, because older shows have already done the whole thing where it's like, okay, let's make fun of how things turn out okay, usually by either not showcasing things going okay and then just cutting to the next week and it's like, oh, everything's okay, or just finding some really bullshit way of showing it. In this one, it's like, let's take the darkest possible route to this, especially since we already showcase that there's science and they can go through portals and all that stuff. And let's just say multiverse, slip to another universe, you're okay. Insanely dark, but it's just a really funny thing, and it really helps give the show an identity that I wouldn't say it didn't have before, but it fully showcased like, okay, yeah, so it's not just Doc and Marty Back to the Future parody. It really is a much deeper show than we're expecting. And not that it's not a goofy, stupid show. I mean, it still has the really goofy and stupid episodes, but with this added depth, it tells you like, okay, so we can really go anywhere, and the possibilities are endless. It's the kind of thing that really makes a show better than what you previously thought. And to be fair, this is a thing that I've noticed is common with a lot of Adult Swim shows, where a lot of them start off as just like goofy parodies or things like that, and you slowly come to realize, okay, so there's more to it than what we thought. Another show that did this really well was Moro Oro, and I'll have to talk about that sometime, where the first few episodes are pretty much just goofy, extreme versions of like religious specials, like especially like if you've ever heard of what's the name of this show, Davy and Goliath. And then by the end of the season, although Adult Swim actually aired the season finale to this show early on, so they kind of screwed it up there, but by the end of the season you realize like, okay, so there are actual things that will have consequences going forward. Venture Brothers starts off as Johnny Quest but for adults, and then we slowly start realizing, okay, there's a lot of characters in here that have more depth than we previously thought. We kind of realize like, okay, these boys aren't just, cannon fodder, and, it starts showcasing like, okay, so there's more to what we thought. That really seems to be Adult Swim's thing when it comes to a lot of these parody shows. And Rick and Morty is definitely one of the more standout ones, especially considering that they did this literally like about midway into the season to make you realize like, okay, yeah, we're just gonna drop the bullshit. We're not gonna wait until the season finale or whatever, or season 2, multiverse, fucked up shit, depressing, and this is where we're gonna be going forward. Which is even crazier because they later bring in another game changer within the same season, where we get introduced to the evil Morty and the whole council of Ricks and all that stuff. But this is the one that literally just fully set it up, because of course, we wouldn't have that without an episode that fully established, like, okay, there are other universes that are exactly like theirs, and some that aren't. But yeah, it's definitely some funny stuff, and I do love that there's like a Cronenberg universe in there, like Rick and Morty, because of Rick and Morty messing things up and making everyone look like Cronenberg creatures, like they mentioned. Eventually you see, oh look, here's Cronenberg, Rick and Morty, who just slip into this universe because they messed up in their universe, I guess. That's kind of funny, I think. But yeah, it's just a really well thought out episode, and it just fully cements just how smart this show is and just how great it is. And yeah, I mean, I don't know what I could say further. I know I could probably lengthen this out by talking about the future episodes, but realistically, I'm like, I'd rather hold those on their own episodes, just because a lot of these episodes do get pretty heavy, and it'd be nice to tackle them all all on their own instead of going through it on this one just because of reasons. So with that, I just want to say thank you for listening. This has been Octaviano Macias, and next week we'll be back with a movie.
The answer is don't think about it. It's not like we can do this every week anyways. We get 3 or 4 more of these tops.
Thank you for coming on and listening to me today. If you enjoyed it, you can always subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can follow my podcast. It's on Podbean, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. And if you want to support me even more, there's always the option of Patreon. Patreon is a great way to support artists. And With that, you can always put in $1 or even more. It's all up to you, all just to help produce the show and other things I may do. Thank you again, and I hope to see you in the coming future.